The history of Sonic the Hedgehog plushes is long and complicated. Sonic is a character who's gone through many changes and reimaginings in his time, and as such, we've seen countless different types of Sonic plushes. Some are classic, some are modern, some can pose, some are floppy, some are huge, some are small, some are really well done, and some not so much. But with so much variation and evolution in the Sonic plush scene and the franchise as a whole, it can sometimes be easy to forget where it all started, and it started with these. In 1991, to promote the release of the original Sonic the Hedgehog in Japan, this set of plushes were released in UFO catchers. Say hello to the first ever commercially available set of Sonic plushes, the 1991 SEGASonic The Hedgehog plush set. This set includes Sonic, Eggman, as well as 3 animal buddies, Flicky, Pecky, and Pocky. This set is noteworthy for not only being the first ever plush set released for the franchise, but also for how, well, simple it is. This set was created when nothing but the first game existed. In fact, considering merchandise is often developed alongside the products they're advertising, it's very possible that Sonic 1 wasn't even completed when this set was being worked on. Chances are, this set was made before the world of Sonic was fully realized. Back in the days of Madonna, the Tokyo Toy Show demo, the Sonic Band. Yeah, we're going all the way back today. This set represents the Sonic series at its purest form, and it's about time we give it the attention it deserves. Welcome to a look back at the SEGASonic The Hedgehog plush set. During the 90s, a majority of the Sonic products released in Japan were under the SEGASonic The Hedgehog brand, as opposed to just Sonic. I'll get more into this later, but this set is where it all started. SEGASonic plushes would continue to be released for the remainder of the 90s, and many sets came out. Since the Sonic series was relatively primitive back then, the plush designers had to get creative. We got SEGASonic plush sets based off summer, ones based off Christmas, we got a set of the characters holding baskets, we got this incredible sports set that gave us one of the best Sonic plushes of all time, Basketball Eggman, and many more. The SEGASonic brand is a very interesting part of Sonic merchandise history, for how different and out there it was compared to what we know today. And this set was where it all started. This set is actually a bit more complex than you may expect. What you're looking at here is actually just one of 3 releases of this set. The first release was in July of 1991, with 5 plushes. That set was then re-released in early 1992, with the plushes all being slightly revised. And then finally, this version of the set was released in late 1992 and would be available for a few years. Each release of the set contains slightly different versions of the plushes. Here's a comparison between some of the 1991 and 1992 plushes. For some of them, such as Eggman and the Animal Buddies, the patterns are almost the same, but when you compare them, you'll notice that the 1992 set is much larger than the original release, among other differences I'll get into later. For Sonic, however, he got a complete makeover. In the 1991 release, he was this cute stringy boy, before being replaced by 2 differently posed, significantly less stringy boys in later releases. However, there was actually a revised version of Stringy Sonic, presumably coming out before the posed ones. This one is of slightly lower quality than the original, and has big clackin' plastic shoes instead of simplified felt ones. That all means that there are technically 12 different plushes in this set. In my collection, I have these 3 from the original release, as well as the entirety of the 1992 set. Let's take a look at them. How does this set hold up all these decades later? Are they still worth looking for after so many Sonic plushes have come out? I'll be going over all of this and more in this video. So, let's begin. Everything must start from somewhere, and with Sonic plushes, it all started with this guy. This Sonic plush, dubbed Stringy Sonic by fans, certainly makes a good first impression. He's referred to as such due to his arms and legs being made of this stringy rope-like material, likely used to replicate the unique art style of Naoto Oshima, Sonic's original designer. It really captures that noodle limb look Sonic is often known to have, and it makes this plush unlike anything else out there. This so-called stringy boy is very unique. He's small, he's basic, but he's one of a kind. To be honest, I actually didn't care too much for this set before I got them, but once I had Stringy Sonic in my hands, I just couldn't say no. If there's one word I'd use to describe this set, it'd be simplistic. Don't get me wrong, the plushes don't feel cheap, but they're certainly very minimalistic. Look at Sonic's spikes, for example. They're made of felt, as are a majority of Sonic's details. Sonic does correctly have 6 head spikes, but they're flat. Despite this, they still capture the look very well, especially from the front. It's pretty remarkable this plush looks as good as it does. as this was made very early on in the series, so references for stuff like how Sonic should look in 3D couldn't have been plentiful, if any existed at all. With the limited assets they had, the plush designers still managed to create plushes that not only capture the characters well, but hold up to this day. Nowadays, licensees get these extensive style guides with tons of 2D and 3D material to reference, which makes creating merchandise much easier. But at this point, Sonic was just thought up. They obviously didn't have any huge guides on the series made yet. If you want an example of what the plush makers likely had to go off of while designing these, there's this old artwork style guide called the Sonic the Hedgehog Material Collection, which was distributed internally prior to the completion of Sonic 1. It gives a very rough outline of how Sega wanted the Sonic series to be marketed in Japan. There's a lot of fantastic stuff in this guide. It has multiple pages of artwork of Sonic, as well as some art of the Animal Buddies, Eggman, and even some Badniks. Most of the artwork here isn't finalized, and some of it was never repurposed outside of this guide, so there's a ton of rarely seen art in here. A lot of this is just fascinating to look at nowadays. My absolute favorite page of the guide has to be this one, page 28. There's what seems to be concept artwork of a Sonic mascot costume, along with the famous inspirational quote from the Japanese Sonic 1 box art, which was basically Sonic's motto back in the early days. Don't just sit there and waste your precious time. When you want to do something, do it right away. Do it when you can. It's the only way to live a life without regrets. SEGASonic merchandise actually used this quote a lot, which I'm all for. Ever wanted a Sonic tote bag with that quote on it? Well, that exists. If that's not good enough for you, try this. This is an officially licensed SEGASonic The Hedgehog lighter, which naturally has part of the quote from the Sonic CD Japanese box art on it. To live a life of power, you must have a faith that what you believe is right, even if others tell you you are wrong. I mean, sure, yeah, that's fitting enough for a lighter. Anyway, where were we? Oh yeah, String Boy. The spikes are far from the only part of this guy made of felt. His hands, shoes, ears, even his eyes are made of the stuff, with different layers of felt making up a majority of his details. Stuff like his hands being felt has its benefits as he has fully detailed fingers, something that would be lost on most plushes with stuffed hands. Though they are still flat, so that's technically not very accurate, but it goes well with the style of the plush. His shoes are the only part of this plush where details are obviously missing. They're flat as well, but they don't have the white strap, let alone the buckle. That's fine though, as it definitely adds to the plush's charm. As for his face, the whites of his eyes are a thick piece that's wrapped around his head, with his eyes themselves being layered on top of that. His ears are similarly built up as well, however they're attached in a way that makes them tilt slightly downwards, which is unfortunate. The only real issue I have with this plush using felt is that over time, some of the pieces can start splitting as the glue holding them together deteriorates. While mine is actually in great condition, you can still see the glue holding the pieces together, and it's only a matter of time before it becomes very hard to find one of these guys in good condition, simply due to how frail they may become. I've seen plenty of these missing pieces. Like look at this Sonic who's missing his nose. Poor guy. As of right now, mine is still holding up very well and you can still definitely find one in good condition. His nose sort of feels like a pom-pom ball, and his mouth is stitched. His mouth is also centered, something very few Sonic plushes can pull off. Due to the nature of his design, Sonic always looks better with his mouth to the side, but I think it works here. This plush has many interesting quirks to it like that. Considering how early it is, Sonic's appearance wasn't fully refined by the time the plush was designed, and as such he isn't too accurate to the Sonic we'd end up getting. While some of these may be artistic liberties, stuff like him having only one back spike shows how early on this plush was designed. The same can be seen on this Jumbo SEGASonic plush, which while technically part of this set, going off of the tag at least, was never included as part of this set's assortment, which is why I'm not covering it too heavily here. I've talked about this guy before, but basically, he's a scaled up, more fully realized stringy Sonic, sharing a lot of his design quirks. He's a very good early Sonic plush, with plenty of aspects that make him stand out. Anyway, the most interesting part of this plush is of course his namesakes, his arms and legs. They're made of string, a very unique design choice. I don't know why they decided to do them like this, but it's a great design choice and totally makes him stand out. They aren't stretchy, but are made of a high quality material. All of the plushes in the set come with gold hang strings, as is common with UFO Catcher plushes. They also came with this paper tag, which features unique artwork made specifically for this set. Sonic's in an interesting pose. I wonder if his arms being curved like this was in reference to the loose, fluid look of the stringy arms. Later SEGASonic plush sets would mostly feature very generic tags, so it's great to see something unique for the first set. This tag is so stylish. I love the shapes in the background, the supersonic text to the side which was added purely for flair. It's a great representation of the time-tested formula of just doing whatever as long as it looks cool, which Sonic, especially in the 90s, did so well. There's one thing about the 1991 set's tags that's pretty interesting. Do you see it? Hey, that doesn't say SEGASonic at all, it just says Sonic the Hedgehog. What gives? Well, the SEGASonic branding wasn't actually introduced until late 1991 to early 1992, so the original set has a standard Sonic branded tag. That makes you wonder though, why did they change the branding? Why did they even use the SEGASonic name in the first place? It was used on nearly every Sonic product released in Japan in the 90s, not just the plushes. It's likely there were people in Japan that thought this guy's name was SEGASonic. It's a very odd naming convention. We don't see Nintendo Mario or Disney Mickey, do we? Well, first off, SEGASonic could just be seen as a cool way to advertise both the character and the company, but there is more to it than most realize. Allow me to explain. In this segment I'd like to call that wacky time Sega of Japan just sorta lost the ability to brand their mascot stuff as Sonic. That's right, if you thought Sega losing the rights to the lyrics of a song called Sonic You Can Do Anything was bad, you're in for a treat. It had been long speculated that the SEGASonic name was actually introduced out of legal concerns, not because the name was totally hip and cool. This was actually pretty much confirmed in the 2014 book, The Untold History of Japanese Game Developers Volume 3, in which Manabu Kusanuki, a designer on the SEGASonic arcade game, discussed the matter. Let's discuss your next game, SEGASonic The Hedgehog from 1993. The title was originally in development as Sonic the Hedgehog, but during development, Sega lost the Sonic trademark. We were afraid we wouldn't be able to use the Sonic title, so we added the Sega part, and that's how we ended up with SEGASonic. After that, I believe they cleared up the trademark dispute, and that's why only the arcade version ended up as SEGASonic. But that's just my conjecture. Wait, Sega didn't own the Sonic the Hedgehog trademark? I don't really know the details. They certainly own it now, but at the time there was some dispute involving the Sonic part, and out of an abundance of caution, we changed the title. That was the situation we were dealing with at the time. So, there you have it. Sonic was rebranded as SEGASonic in Japan to avoid legal troubles. But what was this trademark dispute, and who was it with? Well, an article on mdshock.com reveals it was with Taito, and their game Sonic Blast Man. That game was released in 1990, before Sonic the Hedgehog came out. Sega first trademarked the name Sonic the Hedgehog on December 7th, 1990, and they applied for it in relation to basically any product imaginable, given how Sonic was to be their mascot. But then, only 3 days later, Taito filed for the trademark of Sonic Blast Man, which was issued in relation to arcade games, likely done in response to Sega's new trademark. Most likely to avoid any legal issues, the SEGASonic trademark was applied for on December 11th, 1991, after Sonic 1 had already been released. This was in relation to products and arcade games. While Sega would continue to use the standard Sonic name in Japan on retail video games, Sonic Blast Man was an arcade game, so it sharing a similar name, as well as Taito's apparent protective nature towards the name, is most likely why Sonic was renamed to SEGASonic for most products in Japan. This all makes sense, as the only games that would use the name were arcade games. Along with that, the plushes using the branding as well also makes sense, as they could only be found in UFO catchers, which were found in arcades. Everything else that used the SEGASonic name probably did so to keep brand consistency. Got all that? Alright, well, we're not quite done with the lore about these plushes just yet. These plushes were only available in UFO catchers, but not just any ordinary UFO catcher. Along with the introduction of this set, a SEGASonic UFO machine was released. The machine is decked out in Sonic 1 artwork and style. It even shares some art with the plush set's tag. This was the machine intended to hold the SEGASonic plushes, though actually nowadays you can still find some in operation, where arcades stock them with generic plushes. Apart from the Sonic Flare, it's a pretty standard UFO catcher. However, not only did the machine look the Sonic part, it sounded it too. That's right, you know how some claw machines play music while you play? Like how every machine made in the 2000s seemingly plays Venga Boy's We Like to Party? Well, unfortunately this machine doesn't play that classic. It instead plays music from Sonic 1. It even plays the main theme when dropping the claw. Anyway, how can you go about finding one of these guys nowadays? While most of the plushes I'll be looking at today go for fairly cheap considering their age, Stringy Sonic is the one that really holds his worth. Makes sense given he's not only one of the first Sonic plushes, but very unique as well. I've seen these go for around $50 to $100 on US eBay, but they go for far less on Japanese auction sites. I got mine in lots with other plushes from the set, which were much cheaper with more plushes, so his price can differ heavily. However, Stringy Sonic's release was much more limited compared to the other plushes in the set. set. All of the other plushes were re-released many times, especially the set with the two posed Sonics we'll be looking at soon. That set was available from 1992 to at least 1994, so I imagine a ton of them were made. Stringy Sonic was only released in 1991, and then again with the slightly altered plush in 1992. After that, he was replaced by the more common standard Sonics. Sonic 1 introduced very few characters, but along with Sonic, Eggman was introduced as the series' main villain, and with him being such an important character, he got a plush in this set. While this plush doesn't have stringy limbs, the simplistic design of this set carries through. Here's the original 1991 Eggman plush, the first plush of Eggman ever made. Now, he's a very small boy, which is surprising for Eggman, but even at this scale, they got most of his details correct. He's got his round body separated properly, his cape is made of nicely cut felt, as are his buttons. Those buttons are also yellow and not white as they'd later be portrayed to be. His face is probably my favorite part of this plush. Eggman was always shown to be an absolute goofy boy in the Japanese artwork, and this plush perfectly shows that with his giant eyes, mustache, and toothy grin. This plush absolutely nails the Sonic 1 look of Eggman. You've heard of Stringy Sonic, now get ready for flat arms and legs Eggman. Yeah, this set really cut costs where they could, huh? It's no matter, they still look fine. Definitely can look strange from certain angles though. Since they're flat, they can also easily get damaged or bent, so be careful of that. His hands are nearly identical to Sonic's, so they look good. If anything, this plush certainly captures the wackiness of Eggman. And what more does it need, really? While the Stringy Sonic can be pretty tricky to find for a good price, Eggman goes for considerably less. You can find this guy for around 20 to 30 bucks if you look hard enough. And at that price, he's definitely worth it. You know, people are always requesting that companies make more merchandise of certain Sonic characters, ones that rarely get anything made of them. There are just certain fan-favorite Sonic characters that to this day never get any love from merchandise designers. But you know who did? You know who did get plushes made of them? The iconic characters of Flicky, Pecky, and Pocky, of course. See, back in Sonic 1, the only real main characters we had were Sonic and Eggman, so to fill out the set with more eye-catching characters, they made plushes of some of the animal buddies Sonic rescues in the game. This was such a great idea, and I'm so glad we got these guys when we had the chance. Nowadays, with all the Sonic characters there are, companies would never think to make a plush of a character like Pecky, which I know is a foolish mistake, but at least we got these guys when we could've. The three animal buddies we got here are Flicky, Pocky, and Pecky. Unfortunately, the likes of Picky, Ricky, and not even Cucky got plushes in this set and never would. However, Rocky the Seal animal buddy, you all know him, would actually get a plush later down the line. This one from the 1994 SEGASonic Carnival plush set. Maybe I'll cover that set some other time. But the three we did get in this original set are awesome. Just like Sonic and Eggman, they're very simple in their designs, but are super effective in that simplicity. While I don't have the original releases of Flicky or Pocky, I do have the Pecky. I'll look at the other two later when I talk about the 1992 set. So what do I even need to say about Pecky? I mean, he's got a very simple design, so they captured everything one would want on a Pecky plush well. Not to get too deep into Pecky lore, but this would not be the only plush of the character we'd get. Of course, we have the 1992 ones I'll talk about later, but we also have this one. This one comes from the SEGASonic basket holder set. So if your lifelong desire is for a Pecky plush to hold your pencils or something, there you go. Honestly, it's hard to believe the Sonic series is as unpopular in Japan as it is when characters like Pecky have been there from the start. I mean, come on, look at him. This is definitely a favorite from the set. Fortunately for all you fans of these classic characters, these plushes have never gone for too much. I usually see them go for $20 to $30 each. I guess since the animal buddies aren't that popular in general, compared to other Sonic character plushes at least, these have never had much demand to them. While Stringy Sonic is of course my favorite from the set, these guys are great. I could really care less for the animal buddies in-game, but I do really like their design and what these plushes represent here. Like I said, this set really is the Sonic series at its purest form. I mean, it's the Sonic 1 plush set, so of course it'd be that, but these animal buddies really drive that point home. A few months after that original set came out, they were all replaced with this new set, released sometime in early 1992. These re-releases don't just have a different tag, which now features the SEGASonic branding, they're actually technically different plushes. Their patterns are very similar, but they all have slight tweaks. Stringy Sonic is the one that had the least changed about him. He's now overall slightly lower quality, in terms of materials used and general feel. His limbs, while still very much stringy, are thicker and made of a less shiny material. One lesser known but very much appreciated inclusion on on this stringy Sonic is that his hands have Velcro on them? Yeah, so you can stick them together. It's completely pointless, but that's awesome. The biggest difference though are his shoes. Gone are the red pieces of felt, now he's got these giant clacking shoes. I'd be all for this if not for the fact that, wow, these could totally fall off at any moment. Large plastic shoes attached to a thin piece of string with only glue? Glue that's decades old? Yeah, sounds like a recipe for a bunch of shoeless Sonic plushes to me. Something interesting to note about these re-releases is that they were produced in China. Sounds standard, right? Well, the 1991 releases were actually manufactured in Korea. That's not something you see every day. Maybe that explains the lower quality of the later sets. As for the other plushes, they're all mostly the same, just a little larger. The 1991 plushes, especially the animal buddies, are really small and cute, but these 1992 ones are much bigger. Just compare the original Pecky to the re-release Pecky. Looking like Pecky generations over here. Here's a look at Flicky and Pocky, the other animal buddies in this set. These are the 1992 ones, but the originals are basically the same, just smaller. They both capture the very complicated looks of Flicky and Pocky well. I'd say Flicky looks the best. The face looks great with all of the felt details. The plastic eyes on these animal buddies are a great touch as well. These are a great addition to the set, and I totally recommend getting them. Sometime after that first 1992 set came out, the set was re-released one more time, this time replacing our beloved Stringy Boy with these slightly less appealing but still very good duo of Sonic plushes. The Eggman and Animal Buddies remain the same from what I can tell, but these Sonics are completely new plushes. One Sonic is in his trademark finger-waving pose, while the other is sitting. Comparing these to Stringy Sonic, they definitely lost a lot of charm when replacing Stringy Boy. I get why they did it though. By this point, Sonic's design must have been fully established, so they could more accurately create a three-dimensional plush of him, and didn't have to do stuff like using felt for his spikes. The faces on these guys are, well, first off, their eyes are made of this rubbery material, which looks good and is very smooth, but as you can see on these SEGASonic plushes, can come off very easily. These plushes definitely did not have future-proofing in mind. They're still nice Sonic plushes though, and get recognition for being some of the first truly accurate plushes of the character. They aren't accurate in every way though. Like, what's going on with his mouth? In my opinion, you should never design Sonic with a centered mouth. But what you absolutely should never do is give him a mouth that stretches from each side of his muzzle. It works, but looks sort of unnatural and honestly kinda creepy. Could you imagine this mouth opening? He'd look like a puppet. They'd look much cuter and more appealing with a side mouth, or even one like Stringy Sonic's. Now, Stringy Sonic has a lot of demand, so he sells for a lot, but these ones are much easier to get. They should only run you around, like Eggman and the Animal Buddies, $20 to $30. These later releases of the plushes being so much cheaper is mostly due to how long they were in production. They were introduced in 1992, but could still be found in UFO Catcher Order magazines as late as 1994. UFO sets are made and ordered in bulk, so each case of these would include dozens of each character. Combine that with multiple years of production and you've got yourself some common plushes. That's a good thing though, as you can own these pieces of Sonic history without breaking the bank. So, we've gone over every standard plush released in this set. However, Sega released some variants to spice up the line before introducing new plushes. The best variants that came out in my opinion are these. They're really putting that Christmas Island Sonic history to the test with these Santa SEGASonic plushes. Both of the 1992 Sonic plushes were re-released in this holiday outfit, most likely coming out in holiday 1992. Criminally, they never made a Santa Stringy Sonic, which is too bad because that would have been amazing, but these are still good too. I have the one of him waving his finger. The plush itself is the same, they just added stuff onto it to make him dressed up as Santa. This includes a Santa hat, of course, a giant bag of presents, and a big red bow tie. Holiday-themed plushes are some of my favorites as they're really unique, and not something you see often. These aren't the only Christmas-themed Sonic plushes that have come out though. There was actually a second Christmas-themed SEGASonic plush set, which includes legendary plushes like Tails in a stocking, Santa Eggman, and a Sonic Reef. That's not even all though, as there's also the Christmas Joy Paula Sonic plushes. This guy is great, and it's nice to see them take the existing plush patterns and do something cool with them. This is a variant that's justified and is creative enough to stand out from the original plush. That really can't be said for the next set of variants. So get this, someone over at the plush development team at Sega must have been like, yeah, those SEGASonic plushes are nice and all, but why don't we, put them on carts? And thus the SEGASonic cart plush set was made. While the Santa Sonic plushes transformed the original plushes into something new and exciting, these are literally just the original plushes just glued onto pipe frame carts, which I'm sure was in no way inspired by Mario Kart or these Takara Mario Kart plushes. There's no resemblance at all. In any case, it's a little disappointing these really aren't different from the originals at all. wheel. They couldn't even be bothered to make them hold the steering wheel. This just makes me wish we got a Sonic Drift plush set or something. Oh well. Then again, this set did give us the plush representation of Pecky driving his 5-star Ferrari, so you know, I guess they were onto something here. Not too interesting, but definitely worth noting. So, are there any other variants of this set we should know about? Well, sorta, though this one's a lot more mysterious. Previously, I've mentioned a mythical SEGASonic plush that has been shrouded in mystery for years. This plush has only shown up for sale a handful of times, and hasn't been seen in years. Its authenticity has been doubted, but it certainly exists. What is it, you ask? Well, it's the 1992 finger-waving Sonic, only he's, get this, winking. Yeah, okay, maybe I've overplayed his mysteriousness a little bit, but we didn't know what the deal was with this guy for years. He first showed up on Yahoo Japan during the late 2000s, then on eBay, and that was the end of the story. Whoever bought him from eBay kept him, and we've never seen him since. This picture from that eBay listing is all we've had for years. That was until the owner of the plush saw him mentioned in one of my videos and contacted me about it, giving us so many more images of a plush I never expected to even see again. Small world, huh? They said they got it off eBay years ago, so they must have been the one who bought this one. Everything with it lines up perfectly. Unfortunately though, these new images do pretty much confirm that he's a custom. I thought given they were willing to do stuff like sticking the plushes in carts, a variant so simple like this was plausible, but unfortunately that doesn't seem to be the case here. Remember how I said the eyes on these guys have a tendency to fall off? I guess the original owner of this plush got creative when he lost an eye, using a marker to draw a winking eye on it. Is it an official variant? No, but it is still cool, and the history behind it still makes it interesting. If you ever get one of these plushes that's damaged like this, don't throw it out. You can totally salvage it through something like this. And there you have it, the first ever Sonic the Hedgehog plush set. Here's a recap, for those who may have lost track of all the re-releases. The set was originally released in Sonic-branded UFO catchers in 1991. This set contained the first ever commercially available plushes of Sonic, Eggman, and the Animal Buddies. The plushes were curiously made in Korea, and were branded as simply Sonic the Hedgehog and not SEGASonic. The set was overhauled in 1992 with the first officially branded SEGASonic plush set. Stringy Sonic remained mostly untouched, only receiving new plastic shoes, Velcro on his hands, and some slight differences in materials used. The other 4 characters were made larger. This set was made in China, and is noticeably of lower quality than the original release, likely to save on production costs. Later on, this 1992 set was released again, this time with 2 new Sonic plushes taking the spot of Stringy Sonic. One Sonic with his finger up and one sitting. The other plushes remained the same. That set of 6 plushes were later used for various variant sets, such as a Christmas-themed set with Santa Sonic plushes, as well as a set of the 6 on differently colored carts. Wow, that's a lot of releases for a set that's often considered to be simple and small. In my opinion, the original 1991 Korean release is my favorite. You just can't beat the originals. And the charm of not only their design, but the fact that they really were the first commercially released Sonic plush set just makes me love them so much. We've seen some pretty crazy Sonic plushes over the years. There are ones that are seriously impressive feats in the art of plush making. But then you have these guys. They're small, they're cheap, a lot of their details are made of felt and were literally glued on, but despite that, despite how low budget this set is, it sure is a testament to how simple things were when the series first started. Hundreds of Sonic plushes have been made over the years, and they all owe their existence to this original set from 1991. While these plushes have become increasingly hard to find, and with them becoming fairly old at this point and beginning to degrade, they'll only become harder to find. But if you're a true Sonic collector and really appreciate the history of these, you owe it to yourself to at least try to pick some of these up. They're such a touchstone in Sonic's history and conception, and their simplistic nature is truly what makes them so great. To think it's been decades since these were made is crazy, and they've left quite the legacy behind. But despite their age, I don't see them losing their charm anytime soon.